Hello, Margaret. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Skylar. We're working on some technical difficulties on our end for Tom.
can appreciate Tom's challenge. My company stopped allowing us to access third-party email sites, etc., starting yesterday, and I had no idea. So I went to log in to look at my stuff from work, and I couldn't access anything. It was a nice little surprise on a Monday morning when IT is a little light, but found a workaround.
Thanks for your patience, everybody. We're still working on getting other board members in the meeting.
Hi, I'm in.
Okay, everybody, we're attempting a workaround here. I have Tom Brannigan on speaker on my cell phone. Tom, can you say something? Randy, can you tell me if you heard Tom?
I could not hear Tom.
Okay, let's try that again. Tom, can you say something again?
Yes.
Randy?
Barely.
Shoot. Tom, how would you like to proceed? I'm not really sure. Okay, let's try this again, everybody. Tom, can you greet the?
All right, can people hear me?
We can hear you now, Tom.
Excellent, thank you for that. Are we good to go?
That's a little weak.
Yeah, now I can.
I would like to call this meeting to order at 1:39 p.m. on July 2nd, 2024. I'd like to first talk about our mission. We review our mission every meeting. Our mission at LCCA is to train the minds and improve the hearts of our young people through a content-rich classical education in the liberal arts and sciences with instruction in the principles of moral character and civic virtue. And with that, would you please, and also in accordance with Wisconsin's open meetings law, the required public notice ran on the 29th, which was Saturday, in the Waukesha Freeman, and was posted on our website and the front entry doors of the West Campus. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With respect to attendance today, I would like to report that all board members are present. Can a board member confirm that for me?
Looks like everyone's present, Tom.
Stacy Wren is not present.
Oh,
She's having technical difficulties and we're working on it with her.
Okay, thank you. All board members, with the exception of Stacy Wren, who we expect to join us shortly, are in attendance. Okay, so the purpose of this meeting today is twofold and is listed in our agenda under unfinished business. There are two motions we're requesting today, one having to do with the LCCA Family Handbook and the other having to do with revised public comments policy. And before I move into number 3A, which is the Family Handbook, I just want to share some thoughts that kind of were in my mind coming out of the last meeting. And I'd like to apologize to everybody. I know I left that meeting abruptly. I had a family emergency. And so thank you, everybody, for your grace on that and your understanding on that. And for those of you who've reached out, I totally and absolutely appreciate that. So over the past 2 or 3 months, this is just an observation I've made of the board, that there seems to be a divergence of sorts with the board, where we have a contingent of the board that is functioning as our bylaws and as our policies kind of stand now. And my sense that there is a contingent of the board that wants to weigh more into operational matters of the school and getting actively involved in them. And, you know, per all of our kind of how we've decided we're going to operate, we've decided that we're a governing board, not, you know, we're not going to assume control of any operational aspects of the school. And I see us drifting into that plane a little bit. So, and I don't know if other board members agree or disagree with that, but that is a concern that I have. And it's probably healthy that we have this conversation at some point. And I think it relates directly to this first item on our agenda, which is the handbook. And so with that said, and there'll be discussion on both of these points today, would anybody like to motion to approve the 24-25 academic year LCCA Family Handbook?
point of clarification, Tom, we're motioning to approve it as proposed by Margaret, and then we'll have discussion and can discuss the comments. Is that correct?
Precisely correct. So the motion would be to approve it as the head principal and administration have advanced it, and then we will have discussion before a vote.
Perfect. I motion to approve the proposed handbook changes as presented by our head principal.
All right, anybody want to second that?
I'll
I will
second it.
second.
Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, it's been motioned, approved, and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a response to your comment, Tom. This is Brian. Can you hear me okay too through the?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, good. Totally agree with what you're saying in terms of being a board of governance and not one that meddles in operational issues, with the caveat of, you know, we have a fiduciary responsibility to exercise. So I guess the question for the family handbook as a whole is, why does the board approve it? If it's purely operational, why would we not have a policy that says the administration can amend the family handbook as they see fit? What is the purpose of the board approving it?
I'm testing my computer. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, it's working.
Very nice.
It's good to see all your faces, or most of your faces. I think that that's a great point. And I don't want to, and Margaret's on this call, I don't want to assume. I think it was presented to the board in the spirit of transparency, but since it is operational in nature, I don't see why it needs to be presented to the board.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good question and something we need to think about going forward. We just need to do a little bit of research. I think something like this could be more of a presented to the board versus approved by the board, as we do with some other matters with operations. So that's something that we need to think about going forward if that's how this is done.
I mean, my particular concern relates to conflicts between documents, which I've laid out before in other board meetings, making sure that we don't have conflict. There's redundancy, and some of that's being addressed already with the proposed removal, I should say, of the Section 4 governance, because we already have bylaws that call out how the board functions and operates. So I think partially we're responsible for ensuring that there is not conflict. I think part of our fiduciary responsibility is to also make sure that we're abiding by all statutes appropriately. So I've raised a concern on the special ed section that I've previously shared. And I guess a question really relates to when do we put information in a document that is, the spirit of it is to provide clarity on specific things, but may be redundant to just statute and law. So at what point in time do we really need to even say something specifically in the document? So I guess from that point of view, some of this is a carryover. My concerns is a carryover of when documents were constructed at a point in time in the school's existence where that information wasn't necessarily readily available, or there wasn't historical precedent traveling with us. So making sure the documents are clear and provide the guidance that are necessary, but also don't create unintended consequences, which the board has responsibility for as it comes to following the charter agreement, making sure we're abiding by statutes, etc. So that's the other aspect of my concern is that although the intentions of adding language may be one of good, there could be ill consequences of putting that in there. So if we want to jump down to those specific suggestions that I have, we can do that. I'm trying to respond to what you just said, Tom and Christina, about what our responsibility of the board is. Recognize that a lot of our documents have been made years ago. And if we're trying to simplify and streamline things, you know, I think it's maybe too much of a burden to place solely on the administration. So that's my point of view with it.
So let me respond to that, and I want to keep the discussion going. The two big things you said that I think that they're relevant is make sure that legally everything jives, and then make sure that there isn't redundancies. And I have faith in administration, and I know that our head principal is in consultation with both Hillsdale, that has a deep legal bench, and other legal counsel on this. So I have faith that that's happening. But I'd like to, if anybody else wants to weigh in on this, please do.
I guess the legal point would be my only question, just to make sure that, you know, I think Brian raised some good questions about, you know, the legality of some of the language. Does it conflict elsewhere? So just make sure that we, you know, as we continue to move forward, have a legal review to make sure that our handbook is in compliance with any statutes, and then, to Brian's point, is not redundant with laws that we're already obligated to follow, or would not be in conflict with any laws that we're obligated to follow.
Thanks, Kyle.
I guess the third point that I would just raise to the board, I understand that this is not a representative republic like what the United States is supposed to be, but when we get, in the case of the petition, you know, we have, you know, our parents and families I see as our constituents to a large degree, if not the primary degree. We have well over a majority of those families that signed this petition. So I feel from that point of view too, we have a responsibility to vet and hear things out.
I don't know if we can, is today's meeting, I mean, there are 2 items in the petition that are part of the family handbook. But the petition itself is not something we should be discussing during today's meeting, correct?
I will be, I mean, I've mentioned it in last meeting that I have concerns about those 2 areas of the handbook, the honors and the AP. So it's part of the handbook discussion, in my mind, at least.
Does anybody else have anything to add?
I think I'll just add that with respect to the comments, I think they're very directionally appropriate comments for where the school should be heading. So I think, you know, we would be remiss if we didn't at least take those thoughts into account as we formulate strategy. I know, you know, in discussion in our last board meeting, certainly with respect to the AP issue, that's being addressed. You know, I don't know that making a change in honors, you know, I think it's, as the board, I think we should defer, from my view, defer to the leadership of the school with respect to that particular comment. But as a board, I think we should be exploring ways to address that issue as we move forward as an organization. I mean, we're going to be graduating our first class this upcoming school year, so we're still a relatively young school. I think, you know, we have a long ways to go still to be a mature school and organization. I think that's something that direction would be something that, as a board, we should be providing, I think, some guidance to school leadership on. But at this point, I think, you know, to Tom's point, I think that's more of an operational issue, and we're not in a position to make that decision as a board, I don't feel. But I think we should be setting long-term goals to be getting there, whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, whatever that number is. I don't know that we need to decide that today, but I think that is relevant feedback and we need to be listening to our community on those type of things. I just don't know that we can move as quickly as maybe some in the community would like us to.
And, something that's top of mind with me in these discussions is, we're making decisions for the school today, but we're also, being a young school, we're laying a foundation for, all the parents on this call today, all the parents currently at the school, all of us board members, we're all going to move on. At some point, we all move on. And we have to create a disciplined approach, policies, procedures, heart, compassion, all that foundation for our students today and those who are unborn. So I think that's part of the gravity of this. And I think it's important that we have two-way communication and we have that the board's responsive, but we've been drifting out of our lane significantly, in my view. And we keep, we have board members rewriting aspects of this, how the school's approaching things. And I think it's a slippery slope. And we've all agreed to kind of operate one way. And I just feel compelled to say, there are, Skylar, you're absolutely right. I mean, the head principal has a performance appraisal every year where we have an offsite every year where we talk about these things. But I also think that, I also know that we've all said, we support our administration. And so it's in that spirit that I offer these comments. Would anybody else like to weigh in on this particular agenda item?
I would. So just speaking to those comments, Tom, I have to disagree because I think this goes to the welfare of our students. I think it's a governance issue, the welfare of our students and families and keeping to our mission. And we're not elected. So parents have no recourse to have their concerns heard. They don't get to, if they don't like what we're doing, the directions the school's going, there's absolutely nothing they can do. And they choose to send their students here. I'm worried about the long-term implications for enrollment. If we keep the status quo, we're going to lose, it'll cost us our most ambitious students. And I personally don't think we should accept that. So right now, if an LCCA student has higher education as their goal, it's arguable that their best path would be to attend LCCA through 8th grade and then transfer to another school that let them demonstrate their academic ability through the things like that we're talking about, like AP classes, concurrent enrollment, or honors classes, as well as having a curriculum that will give them more time for extracurriculars. So from an enrollment and a financial perspective, I think this is absolutely something that we should have a say in as a board.
So, Taryn, I just want to be clear. Are you suggesting that the board should assume operational control of part of LCCA?
See, that's where we differ. I don't think that asking or directing administration to guarantee AP testing as an example or designating classes as honors, I don't see that as operational control. That's where we differ.
So
that's where we disagree.
So thank you for that. So does the board agree that the board making this decision, that is not relevant to operations of the school?
Can you rephrase that, Tom? So are you asking us if we agree that getting and Taryn's suggestions are operational in nature? Is that what your question is?
Well, and Taryn, push back if I'm wrong, but you are suggesting that that weighing in and dictating this part of how the school functions is governance and not operations.
In my opinion, yes.
And I disagree with that, but I'd love to hear from the rest of the board on that.
Tom, I just wanted to share some thoughts. So I certainly sympathize with where Taryn's at because I really thought about this and the lines between operations and policy, can get pretty blurred. So I've actually done a lot of looking into that. And one of the places I referred was the board development materials we received from Hillsdale. And one of the sections in there is who's responsible for policy and procedures in a school. And I can send it to anybody who wants it, but I'll spare you the paragraphs in advance. But the last sentence in conclusion was, in most cases, the board should not take on the task of writing policies and procedures manual, accepting those policies and procedures that govern the board's own operations. So although I sympathize with sort of the fuzziness of the line between the two, that's really where I fall back on. That's Hillsdale's recommendation. And, after thinking through it, it seems to make sense to me that should fall on the administration versus the board.
Randy, can you repeat that sentence one more time? I just want to make sure I understood it.
Okay. In most cases, the board should not take on the task of writing policies and procedures manuals, accepting those policies and procedures that govern the board's own operations.
Okay, thank you.
I have sort of my thoughts I can share on this matter. I disagree that I don't believe that interfering with any kind of operational matter, whether it's dictating AP, etc., those are all in the realm of school operations and school management to dictate. We just make sure that it aligns with our mission. I do believe that everything that the leadership team is doing does align with mission. So therefore, I don't feel that we should get involved per our board code of conduct. I think so. That's one issue. The other issue is I think there's some confusion as to what our mission is. And maybe this is something we need to dive into a little bit more when we have a board offsite, because we've talked about this at our last meeting. At every meeting, we read our mission, what we are. We are not a college prep school. College prep is really preparing your child for the college application process, which is all these things that a lot of parents would like. And I completely understand that. I have kids in high school. I know where they're coming from, but that's not something that aligns with our mission. We cannot be both classical education and college prep. Now, down the road, perhaps school leadership will take a look at this again and say, we're at a different place. Maybe they'll make changes down the road. But right now, I trust that our school leadership has done their due diligence on this topic, and it's not our realm to dictate to them what they should do. So I support their decision on this matter, and I support the family handbook as a whole.
Thanks, Christina. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Just, I guess, one kind of additional comment. I do appreciate that the school leadership did take into account the comments. I mean, I don't think that the comments from the parents were completely ignored. I think that's, takes a lot of humility to take that information in and then adjust on the fly. With the addition of some of the AP classes, obviously, we didn't accomplish everything, or the administration didn't accomplish everything that the petition suggested should be accomplished. But I think that speaks to, the flexibility in that, as a administration, the school is taking into account commentary from the parents. Not going to satisfy everyone, but I think that's a step in positive piece of that feedback that we received. So I'm very pleased with that. And I think, there's more that potentially as we grow as a school, to Christine's point, more opportunity to, review some of those things down the road. So.
Okay.
So I just want to say, back to Brian's point about kind of representing parents and their desires. I find it extremely ironic that a school founded because parent concerns were dismissed is now doing that very same thing. That's astonishing to me.
Actually, I'd like to disagree with that as well. The school was not founded, it was founded by parents, correct, that were unhappy with what the type of education they were getting at another nearby public school. The intent was always to provide a opportunity for students to learn from teachers, having teacher-led content, return to the basics of learning from textbooks and using pencils and paper, and minimizing the digital nature of learning. We wanted teachers teaching, not kids teaching themselves. That was the intent. Not to say that parents shouldn't have input or have an opinion or share that with administration. Absolutely they should. but that was not the intent, to have the parents actually dictate how the schools run. That was never the intent.
I didn't say that, but I understand what you're saying.
I do think, Taryn, too, that, that Skylar did bring up some good examples where the parents' feedback was taken into account and implemented. I mean, not to the extent maybe that some wanted, but I do think that was, Skylar did a good job describing how that was accounted for and incorporated in the policy. So I just wanted to bring up that point too, just so it doesn't come off as the parents' suggestions were completely ignored, because I don't think that was the case.
Stacy, good to see you. You're on mute. Don't you love technology?
No. Sorry. Sorry, we're having some real issues here, but finally got it figured out. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate everything you've been doing.
And we've been having some good discussion around the proposed 2024 LCCA family handbook. So good discussion. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the 2024-2025 handbook as it's been presented by the school?
Actually, I think we already did that, right? We just
We were voting. Sorry. My bad.
Well, I have more comments then, because now
sure.
that we're done with the government comment, I'll go into my concerns about the handbook. So as I brought up at the last board meeting, I'm not prepared to support the motion to approve the family handbook. I have concerns about 4 specific sections, and I know that you've heard this, but this is a public meeting, so I will state these concerns again. The nature of my concerns lies in the fact that I do not believe these sections support or are compatible with some of the core components of the mission of our school. I object to the proposed changes to the discipline section, specifically the addition of lunch detentions found on page 17. I also ask for the removal of loss of free play at recess as a consequence. I think taking children's free time is counterproductive, creates a bad experience for the children, and doesn't improve their behavior or improve their hearts and minds. Next is the curriculum section found on page 33. I'd like to see the following included language. LCCA guarantees access to AP examinations either through partnering with other schools or proctoring them at LCCA. My next area of concern is in the grading section of the family handbook on page 38. I believe all core curriculum high school classes should be designated as honors, including math, science, history, literature, and composition. LCCA offers classes that could also be considered honors, including but not limited to music theory, music composition, upper level art classes, upper level Latin, etc. LCCA must deal with the realities of today's college application process and disadvantages that our students have with a below average GPA. The last section is found on pages 29 and 30. This was brought to our attention in an email from the Legacy Committee in May. I would like to see the removal of the 3rd paragraph of this section of the handbook. I believe we need to remove this because the 2 entities have 2 separate tax codes, bylaws, etc. And paragraph 3 entangles the 2. In a letter to the administration and board dated May 23rd, TLC wrote, additionally, in response to the parent handbook entry, TLC believes that the first 2 paragraphs are sufficient in defining the relationship between LCCA and TLC as it pertains to parents and students at the school, and that the 3rd paragraph may be in opposition to what we understand to be appropriate regarding the necessary separation of TLC and LCCA in regards to the audit and consolidation issue, as well as our legal operation as it pertains to states' regulations for 501c3 organizations, as well as our bylaws. We suggest that the 3rd paragraph be removed from the handbook. So these are the 4 areas and the reasons I object to the motion to approve the family handbook.
Would anybody like to respond to that before we vote?
Hey, Tom, I just one thing at Taryn's 4th point, sort of a legal point. I don't understand that aspect of it or the legal implications or the nature of those 2 entities. Is that something that has been covered by our legal experts at Hillsdale or elsewhere that we can be comfortable with?
Margaret, are you able to?
Margaret? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, we have included that section as advised by a financial consultant and our advisory at our financial Skyward connection. So we feel that following their advice and maintaining that statement that simply gives authority to the school to oversee operational funds, including donations, is relevant and appropriate.
Thank you, Margaret.
Okay. Any more comments?
Um,
Go ahead, Skylar.
I was just gonna say, that's something I think that particular portion of the handbook is something that we should probably get a legal opinion on. I don't know the credentials of the folks at Skyward. I mean, if it sounds like someone maybe a little outside their lane from my perspective, I don't want to put a roadblock on that particular topic, but I do think it would be good to run by legal counsel on that particular issue.
Good advice.
Yeah, I share that sentiment with you, Skylar. Early in the days of LCCA, the TLC and LCCA were somewhat intertwined, and we had to work to get those entities separated. They are entirely different governance bodies at this point. So I don't know if the concerns raised in our very first audit would be applicable to the way we're currently operating, because it is clear we're separate entities. So I agree we should get legal counsel, and I just don't see how we as a board have any governance authority over TLC. So if we were to approve it, that it's not something that we have purview over, in my opinion. I did want to circle back on the honors and AP, and this is probably just an open-ended question at this point in time, but I had raised the question in open session last month. How would we as a board characterize success of our graduating seniors that want to go to college? The charter agreement in the academic policy just states that it doesn't really state anything about, if our students want to go to college and they can't get in, there's no measurement of success there. All the charter agreement calls out is graduation rates. So section 8.6 of the charter agreement, graduation compared to the average graduation rate of all Waukesha counties. So, that's, in my opinion, I feel we should have something that defines success in this specific area. So we're having this, or whoever the board is having this conversation a year from now, and we're looking back on the discussion that we're having now, like, hey, that was a great year, we did fantastic, or wish we would have thought of that, and could have replayed the first year of our graduating seniors. I guess that's the context to the question of how would we define, or the administration define, what is success? If every senior wants to go to college and gets in, like 100%, that's success. Is 95% success? Is 70% success? Do we want to have visibility to it? I feel like, we're weighing in on operational issues of Hillsdale, quote unquote, or H for Hillsdale versus H for honors, when in reality, from a governance perspective, it's how do we define success of our students that are graduating? So if we get 100% of our seniors a year from now that get into their first college of choice with no mention of honors on their transcript, well, then I think we would be happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if only 50% get into their first college of choice? I mean, so it's like from that point of view, if you think about governance versus operational, some of this is a struggle because we don't have a substantial amount of policies, governance policies that are even written. You know, so we're kind of grasping at straws with these discussions. So I think I'd like to at least underscore the conversation with, because person to person, we have different views on this, but I think the intent of anybody that joins the board and signs code of conduct and all those other documents, like they go into it with the intent to be a governance board, not an operational board. But let's recognize that we don't have a lot of these policies or measurements of success in place yet. So that's my question. I mean, anybody can jump in here on this, but
Yeah, I have a comment actually. And Brian, I think what you're saying is actually exactly what the board should be doing in terms of strategy and looking ahead at what is our vision. We don't have a vision statement yet, which is something we need to develop as a board. And what does success look like? Now, that's a whole separate conversation for another day, perhaps for our offsite, but I think we need to be really careful without getting too much into detail right now. Again, mission aligned, because a couple things you said there were more aligned to college prep, which we need to be really careful about. I think classical education is about developing the whole child, and perhaps children will go to college, but it's not about getting them into the best college out there. It's about getting them into the best college for them and what's the best fit for that child. So that's kind of an example of what might be a measurement of success somehow, but we can talk about it more as a board of what do we see? It's not just college, it's the trades, it's the military. You know, what does that look like? Researching some other mission state or vision statements from other Hillsdale schools might be helpful. So that's a conversation we can have when we have our offsite.
And I just want to say that looking to college, I know you're talking about getting their first choice. So often I feel like that doesn't always happen for a child. You might have goals and aspirations to get into a school and you can apply and you can have everything in line that should accept you there, but you may not get that choice.
So
Okay.
this is a good discussion for another day.
Well, then I ask, it sounds like everyone, this is interesting because Christina almost quoted another Hillsdale Schools website when they were talking about, we want to get your children into the colleges that are the best fit for them. And there are many, many Hillsdale charter schools that talk about all of the AP classes, concurrent enrollment, some do with colleges, honors designations, all of these opportunities to help set their students up for success if that's the way that they want to go. And this is all on their websites and they seem very proud of it. They say we start working with the children in 8th grade with a college advisor. So it's just interesting that we're like the one Hillsdale charter school that doesn't seem to agree with this. So if we are not going to be doing these things, then I would ask that we would put it on the website as a disclaimer so parents know when they send their children to our school. I would ask that we would put it on the website that we do not believe the purpose of a high school education is to prepare children for secondary education. So that way parents at least are making an informed decision.
I don't think that's correct in how you said that. It's not that we don't care about secondary education. Of course we do. But that may be one option of many that children choose, and they're going to be well prepared regardless of what path they go down. I do think it's to operations.
We're making that decision for them. We as board members, by not adding these things and leveling the playing field with all other students out there, are making that decision for those students and those families. We're not leaving options open. We're saying it stops here.
Well-
Your opportunities, with things like you have no chance. The playing field is not level. You won't be competitive.
I don't agree with that at all.
I don't agree with that at all, and I would never support marketing the
No.
school in a way that would intentionally harm it. I would never articulate, that is not an accurate articulation of what's happening here as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, nor should the board dictate how the school communicates. That is also not our realm. That is up to the school and to decide how to communicate what we are to the families and the community.
The other thing, Taryn, that I would just add to that comment is, we're not saying that the school will never have those policies. This is a vote for the handbook for the 2024-2025 school year. And again, this is the first graduating class. You know, are those kids, are they going to have to work harder potentially because this is the first graduating class? I think the answer is probably yes in a class from 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. And it's not a slight to those kids. It's something that, like, they've taken on a harder curriculum. But in life, I think they're going to be better off for that. Will it get them into their first choice of college education? Maybe not. But when you have a new school, that's typically going to be the case. And so this is just a vote on the handbook for the 2024-25 school year. It doesn't mean that in future years that we might not be able to offer some of those opportunities. And I think, to Brian's point, as a board, we need to be exploring, providing some additional direction of what are the things that we want as what's success for our students as we graduate. And at this point, I don't think that we're in a position to have those things, according to our administration and our leadership team. And as a board, we've got to provide that guidance as we move forward, but we can't dictate to the school leadership that they need to be doing things that we're not maybe in a position to do yet. And we have to defer to them, I think, on that. That's where we cross the line from governance to operational. If we dictate to them what they have to do.
Well, with all due respect, Skylar, these are changes that don't need 4 or 5 years to be made. They're very simple changes that can be implemented immediately. I'm not willing to sacrifice children's lives and futures because we want to take 4 or 5 years to do something that could be done today. We're talking about whole classes of children whose futures will be impacted, and the school, our enrollment in the school. Like, what kind of students are we attracting? What kind of students are we keeping? So I know you all know my position. I just wanted to respectfully disagree with what you're saying.
Thanks all for that robust discussion. All in favor of the, as administration has advanced the school handbook, all in favor of approving it, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Nays?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, the ayes have it. The handbook is adopted. All right, so let's move to the second and final agenda item that we have here, which is a revision to the public comment policy that we have for board meetings. And I worked on this. There's kind of, and everybody can download this. It's on board docs. There's kind of two components to this. One is just updating factual stuff. Like, we have 10 board meetings a year. Here's when they are, just stuff that wasn't in there that it makes sense to be in there. And then there are a couple things in there about, and this, again, just if you'll just indulge a little preamble. So what I've noticed is meetings compared to when I started on the board to now have changed pretty drastically. And I'm concerned that some people think that a 3-hour board meeting is normal for a school. In my mind, in the school board meetings I've been a part of, they're usually an hour to an hour and a half. And we have closed sessions, and that's its own animal. But my observation has been, and again, I want the board to weigh in on this. My observation is that we're focused less on board business and more, they're becoming more of like political rally or town hall. And there's got to be a sweet spot, a middle ground between public comment and being able to focus on board business. So my recommended changes are in that vein. And there's been some sweeping statements already made in this in this meeting, like we don't care about children's futures and stuff like that. You know, I asked the board, no, that's nobody's intent here. And my intent here isn't to squelch public comment. It came to my attention in a board meeting that I missed recently that although people who were participating in public comment were asked to keep their comments to 3 minutes, that they either ignored that or were unable to. So I think that we need to establish some guidelines here. So with that, would anybody like to make a motion to approve this revision to public comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the revision to the public comments.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Great. Discussion. What do you think?
Yeah, I have a couple of points on it, Tom, and I appreciate your concern and the effort to put something out there for us to discuss. So thanks for doing that. We haven't had any open session meeting that has gone 3 hours. So I think this last board meeting is the first time, and I don't know if there's a setting on YouTube where the recording got cut off 2 hours. So everything, I think it went like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that. So the last, whatever it was, 20 or 30 minutes of the meeting, I don't know exactly how long, the YouTube video cut it off at 2 hours. But if we go to the May meeting, which we had probably close to an hour of citizens forum, that meeting was only 1 hour and 47 minutes. And the meeting before that in April was 1 hour and 4 minutes. So I don't think the board meetings have been long, in my opinion. We have seen an increased frequency or increased number of speakers, that's for sure. I went back and looked at the minutes and we had 0 speakers in January, we had 2 in February, we had 2 in March, we had 7 in April, we had 17 in May, and then we had 11 in June. So we have seen an increased frequency of that, but I think that's a product of everything that's being discussed right now. So I have a lot of heartburn just capping it at 20 minutes, I'll be honest. But I do think there's an opportunity to ask the speakers to be more concise. So I was going to offer up a suggestion, and that would be to remove the maximum of 20 minutes, but limit the amount of time to speak from 3 to 2. And if we have 17 speakers, then it should take 34 minutes. If there's extenuating circumstances in a meeting like we just had with the petition that had just been shared to the board and we want to extend it, then that's a decision the board could make in that meeting, I suppose. But, I feel anybody that comes to the meeting wanting to speak, they should have an opportunity to speak. And we should focus more on the front end and just ask for a more concise amount of information to be shared with the board. And if they have more to say, then obviously they can email. Try and follow the grievance policy and the chain of command. But if it gets to a point where they have to bring it to the board's attention, then email us or reach out. That can be done too. So that's my suggested change and the reason why.
Hey, Tom, I was thinking something similar to like, I guess maybe feel the same way as, or I get a little uncomfortable when we just say, okay, 6 people can speak or 7 people can speak and the first ones there get to say their piece. But I was just thinking about maybe a more fair way to do it. And I was wondering if, since I also don't want to be there all night for a meeting either, is if we took our 20-minute slot and carved it up between the number of speakers with a 3-minute maximum. So if there's 10 speakers, they each get 2 minutes. If there's 5 speakers, they can, each speak 3 minutes if they want. And then if, like Brian said, for some reason, there's 100 people there and we wanted to expand it by 10 minutes for that meeting, we could do that if we chose. But I thought that may be a way to help the speakers economize their comments. And maybe if it's some people that are talking before a meeting, have similar points, they could collaborate and maybe have one make the point during their time and another make the point during their time. So I thought that might be a good compromise between what Brian said is not cutting anybody off from speaking or saying their piece, but also not having this, drag out beyond the 20 minutes.
So we wouldn't have a policy per se. We'd kind of wing it at the meeting.
The policy would be we'd have 20 minutes and however many speakers there are. If there's, we just carve it up between the speakers. So each gets an allocation of the 20 minutes. So if there was 10 comments, then you each get 2 minutes instead of 3. But there'd still be a maximum of 3. So somebody doesn't go up and ramble for 20 minutes if there's no one else.
Okay.
I just thought that might be a compromise between the two.
I have some comments. So we don't meet every month as a board, and we are unelected. So parents have no say in who is on the board. So I personally don't feel it's a big imposition for the board to listen to what people have to say for a longer period of time. Some of the parents, it's quite a drive to the school. And so some of the parents, for a lot of people, are taking upwards of an hour, sometimes almost 2 by the time they drive there, drive home, arrive early, wait their turn. And so I feel like any and every parent who's willing to invest that much time to speak for 3 minutes deserves to be heard. We need to remember that the school exists because parents choose to send their children here. And I think we need to give them the maximum opportunity to comment, especially because we're not responsive to emails. So I don't think that's asking too much as a board. And if we're not willing to listen to what our parents have to say once a month, do we really care about what they have to say? So I think I'd like to propose that we set a time limit to 1 hour total, 3 minutes each about any subject, including topics that are not on the agenda. So we can incorporate all of the feedback parents have. And I just want to ask, are we as a board so busy that we can't give up an hour of our time 10 times a year to listen to our families?
Skylar, Stacy?
I think an hour might be a little excessive. I don't know that we necessarily respond to all the comments in the meetings in person either, Taryn. I certainly have been reading the commentary that we receive as a board. I think a lot of it, for the most part, is probably operational, not governance related. But I don't know that an hour is necessary. I like both Randy and Brian's suggestions. I think having a general process in place of, whether it's 20 or 30 minutes, whatever the time limit is, and then in certain extenuating circumstances, extending it from time to time, I'm okay with that. But I don't know that having a standing hour for everyone to air all their grievances is necessarily productive. Again, it's extenuating circumstances. I thought it was appropriate last meeting that we extended the commentary period, but I don't know that we need to make that the operating procedure.
I also, sorry, I forgot to point out that the school districts around us don't limit the time. They don't limit topics to the agenda like we are proposing to do in this new policy. It's interesting that we would try to do that when no one around us does that same thing.
I don't think that we're trying to be what the local school districts are. So I think there's a point of distinction there.
So we want to listen to less than the local school?
I don't know that it's necessarily more or less, Taryn. I think it's making sure that we're good stewards of the time of our administration, of each of us as board members, and also taking into account important comments and feedback from our community. I think they are important, but I think to everyone's point, for the most part, we can be concise. And if it's, community members from our community coming up and repeating the same comments, over and over. I don't know if that's the best use of our time. So I like the proposals of both Brian and Randy of, trying to find a way to limit that topic or limit the discussion just to make sure that it's concise. That's the important part, I believe.
And Taryn, too, remember they always have the ability to email if it's a concern that's off topic too. So it's not that we're not hearing or listening to them. It would just be a different forum to communicate those off topic concerns.
Right, but with all due respect, people don't, unless Tom has been responding to people privately, I'm not seeing very many responses to emails.
Well, that's better than what you just said about there's no responses. I mean, Stacy, you can weigh in on here. I know we spent a lot of time on responses to parents, so I'm not sure where that comment's coming from.
Some of the parents have sent repeated emails, and so perhaps not all of them have gotten responded to, but I know that from what I've seen, every parent has gotten at least one response to that particular topic that they've been emailing us about.
And they should get a response. I think there are some times where we're trying to find out information. I know, there have been some communications with the school that have bordered on intimidation and harassment, quite frankly, and the board's been given ultimatums. Those are different types of communications that kind of rise to a different level, but the vast majority of them are responded to and or they're researched to make sure that we get a good response out. But I think, and this might be a point of disconnection, that when we're sent emails on operational issues, we refer them back to the school. We've been very clear about that, and a lot of today's discussion has been around that. So what we don't want to do, and again, board, I want you to weigh in. What I think we don't want to do is have a way to circumvent administration on operational matters. So we stay very close to administration on the emails that come in that are operational in nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And back to Randy's point, it's not that limiting the amount of time or limiting the topic to what's on the agenda. We're not saying parents can't share their communication with us. It's just in another form, a different format. So I do support, and I apologize. I had some technical problems. I dropped off for a minute, so I'm not sure what was said about, did you say something about changing the length of time someone could speak so that more could speak? Were you changing it to 2 minutes? Was that?
I suggested 20 minutes. Brian had a suggestion there. I think Randy came up with a good compromise, but then Taryn had suggested an hour for public comment.
Okay, Randy, what was your suggestion?
My suggestion was we carve out 20 minutes or whatever we decide the appropriate time is, and we divide that time between the number of speakers with a 3-minute maximum. So if there's 10 comments and we have 20 minutes, each gets 2 minutes. If there's 5 that have comments, they could each have the full 3.
Absolutely. And then if we don't get to everybody, they can email us after the meeting. But I like that idea. I support that.
I think, Randy, you were suggesting we would get to everybody. It would just be the amount of time each person would get would vary depending on
right
how many are interested. So I think some version of that. I mean, for the record, we have not had a citizen forum that has gone an hour. I mean, you can go back and look at the recordings. The longest one, I think, was in May. We were pushing an hour, but we weren't quite an hour. We weren't last month.
I believe it was
So,
40, Brian.
Pardon me?
I believe it was 40 minutes, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, I think
Right.
you're right.
So I think an hour is probably a bit unreasonable, but I think 20 is unreasonable, and that's my opinion. I would be supportive of a 30-minute, and then it gets divided amongst the number of people. If there's less than 10, then they each get 3 minutes. That I could be supportive of, but I think just if we have 17 people and just cutting it off, I understand what Karen is saying. I mean, there's some parents that are driving an hour to be there. So if they get there and the last one there and they draw the short straw, it's just, what's another 2 or 3 minutes at that point?
I
But
would support, oops, sorry, Brian, are you done?
Yep.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I would support with the 20 minutes, only because from what you were sharing with the number of people that spoke, you had like a 0, a 2, 2, 7. And then just recently, our numbers have gone up. So I think I'm on board with like Randy's idea of 20 minutes, splitting the time, trying to get everybody in. But then if we want to extend it, we still can extend it at that point. But I would be supportive of the 20 minutes.
Any other discussion? All right, so we'll move to a vote of this document as is with the provision that Randy added that will adjust to make the most of the time. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye. Opposed?
nay,
Okay, the ayes have it. Passes. Okay.
so Brian, were you the only one that was a nay? I'm sorry, I'm trying to record this or
Nay.
keep track here.
yeah, I would have been supportive of 30 minutes, but I think 20 minutes is too short.
So you're a nay.
I was a nay as well, Stacy.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our agenda for today. I think most of you have gotten back to me on the summer meeting, but if you haven't, please do so as like a quarter to yesterday, as soon as you can, so we can get that scheduled. With that, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll motion to adjourn the meeting.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Happy 4th.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.